Okay, so at the beginning of each chapter, what are we going to do?
Download the file.
We're going to go to Cybex website and we're going to download the file. So I'm going to go through that process one more time for chapter 2. Navigate to the page, go to the downloads. Make sure that you are downloading the data set, not the bonus chapters. I'm going to click to download that data set. It's going to come as a zip file. I should be able to just double click the zip file and it will open this up where I can navigate to the files I need to get to. Make sure you're using imperial as opposed to metric. The book does have the dimensions for metric, but imperial is just the system that we work with in America. So I'm going to open that file. What do I expect it to do? Bring up this screen that shows me, hey, the file needs to be upgraded. Why is it being upgraded?
Because the 2013 file?
Yeah, this was made in an earlier version of Revit. Do not freak out if you see this. This is pretty common. So you're just going to hit upgrade the model. It's going to think for a minute as it upgrades this model. Once it's upgraded to 2017, can we open it in 2013? No, Revit is not backwards compatible. I know I've said that about a dozen times at this point in the semester, but I really want to drill that home. We're going to start in chapter 2, again, right at page 1. It's going to be a review. I'm going to move through this information quickly, but since you have this recording, you can stop, play it back. Do not get discouraged if you find yourself doing things multiple times. The repetition is good for you. It's going to make you faster in the program. It's going to give you a level of comfort in the program. You can see down here in the bottom left-hand corner, right about here, that it's going to give you an update on how much processing has been done on opening the file. Obviously, as the files get larger, it's going to take longer to upgrade those files. And evidently, the computer's a little slow this evening.
So I have my flash drive. I just put that in and I open up Revit and I can just put it in there, correct? I don't have to do the download of that.
If you've already downloaded it and upgraded it to 2017, it's on your flash drive, yes, you can just plug your flash drive in. It doesn't have to be re-downloaded. I'm purely doing this for review so that everybody sees it multiple times. So 3 weeks from now, we're not still talking about how do I get that initial file. All right, so it's going to open it up in this view. The first thing the book asks me to do is navigate to level 1. And we're going to do that via the project browser. So I'm just going to simply come over to the project browser, double click on level 1, and I'm going to be in this view, which really constrains me in X and Y. What's the next thing the book asked us to do?
Put down reference plane.
Yeah, it asked us to put a reference plane down in the center of the book. So our goal is to get to where figure 2.1 is right now in the book, but we're going to start by putting in some reference planes. You can activate the reference plane tool by coming to the architecture tab, going to the work plane panel, and clicking on reference plane. It's going to open up a context menu. That's what these green menus are, right? And basically, we have 2 ways we can draw a reference plane. We can either pick a line, or we can draw it with 2 points. This first reference plane we're going to draw with 2 points. We're going to come in here, and we want to snap to the middle of this wall. To make sure we're actually snapping to the middle, we want to see that triangle. And I can sit here and drag and click over it until I get the triangle, or I can type SM on my keyboard, and then I know it's only going to snap to the middle point of that wall. I'm going to drag this out. The book suggests that we adjust this reference plane, so I'm going to click on it and move the grip out. And now my first reference plane is established in the center of the building. What's the next thing the book asks us to do? Create a reference plane on the top and a reference plane on the bottom of this initial reference plane 15 feet away, correct? So some of you stumbled on this step. But basically what you want to do is, if you still have the reference plane command active, hit escape twice, or come over here and click on the modify tab button. We're going to invoke the reference plane command again. I'm going to do that by navigating back to the icon, but you could also do it with the shortcut. How would you do it with the shortcut?
RP.
Yeah, you type in the hotkeys, which are RP. So let's first just click on reference plane. Now we're going to use the other draw tool, not the draw line, but the pick line. We're going to pick that line, and before we do anything, we're going to look at the options bar right here, and we're going to set the offset to 15 feet. Oh, not 51, 15. At this point, all I've done is type in 15. I haven't hit enter. If I hit enter, I'm going to clear the command. I'm going to hover over the reference plane that I've drawn, and you'll see that another light blue line shows up. That light blue line is telling you where this reference plane is going to end. So I'm going to click once for the top, I'm going to hover again, click once for the bottom, and I'm going to hit the escape key twice. And there are my two reference planes. That takes me through figure basically 2.5. It should look like this at this point. So now we're going to move on to adding some walls. First thing, if you have your reference plane command still active, hit escape twice or come to the modify button right here, and we're going to add some additional walls. The book asks you to do this by selecting a wall and telling you I want to create similar. So we're going to come here, right click on the wall, create similar. Basically that's going to load that wall type into our drawing or into our tool. And what it asks us to do is zoom in here and make sure we're going from the face of the wall, click and drag. As soon as I start dragging, what do I notice? I notice that my wall is not in the right orientation. So to flip that orientation, I'm going to hit the space bar. It puts it in the right orientation. And now that I've got it drug in the correct direction, I'm going to type in 25 for 25 feet. And that takes us through item, I believe 6 here in the book. Actually, item 7. Item 8, press escape. Do the same for the other side. Alright, so we're going to hit escape here. I'm going to invoke the wall command by going to architecture, wall. I'm going to come down here. I'm going to click. I find that my wall is again, actually here it's in the right orientation. I'm going to click here and I'm going to drag it out and I'm going to type in 25 for 25 feet. Now my drawing should look like figure 2.7. Oh, actually, what did I do wrong? I drew the wall in the wrong place. So how could I fix that?
Click the little arrows.
No, I drew it completely in the wrong place. It's supposed to be down here.
Oh, you can drag it.
I can align the wall, I can delete the wall, I can redraw the wall. I'm going to tell you, get into the habit of not deleting the walls. Just type, or go to modify, align, and you can say, hey, I want to align that to that face, and it will move the wall. And then it's correct. So again, you don't want to delete walls, especially as you get further and further into Revit, because they're going to have more and more information. For example, if I have a door and a wall and I delete the wall, I will delete the door at the same time. And if I redraw the wall, the door won't show back up. I will have to replace that wall. All right, that takes us through figure 2.7. Next item, start the wall command again. All right, I'm going to do it this time by typing WA on my keyboard, and it will invoke the wall command. From the top 25-foot wall, pick the corner of the finished face against the brick face, not the ledge below. The wall may be positioned in the wrong orientation, so tap the space bar if it is. So we're going to zoom in here, we're going to pick there, and we notice what? It's in the wrong orientation. So I'm going to hit the space bar to put it in the right orientation. Move your cursor up and to the left at a 135-degree angle. Revit snaps at 45-degree angle increments. Okay. So we see that it snaps at 45, and really what we're trying to do is align the end of this wall with this edge. So you can see as I get close to that edge, I get a blue line. Because Revit's telling me, hey, we probably think that you want to snap to that wall. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to drag this out. I get to 45. And this can be a little tricky, but there we are. And you'll notice right away that it cleaned up this wall joint, and we'll talk about wall joints later in the chapter, but that's a very nice feature of Revit. Then it wants me to do a horizontal wall. Draw a horizontal wall to the left 25 feet. So I'm going to click and drag here and hit 25 feet. There's my wall. Now it wants me to, from the left point of the wall, draw a wall up 25 feet. Okay. Then it wants me to draw a wall in this direction 80 feet. Okay, now I hit return, and it took me out of my wall command. So what do I do now? Uh-oh, not a big deal. Click on modify, architecture wall, and it will invoke the wall command again, and we can click right here, and we can continue to draw. Now if we look at the orientation of our wall, we're going to want to flip that. And we're going to want to draw it down 25 feet. All right. This takes us to the point where it wants us to draw a radial wall, which is item 8. On the Modify Place Wall panel, click the Start in Radius Arc button. So you'll notice here in the Draw panel that we have significantly more tools than we had with the reference plane. One of them happens to be the Start in Radius Arc. So we're going to click that. And since we already have an active command, what we want to do is define the end of the radius, which will be at 30 feet, I believe. That's item 9 here in your book. Item 10, pick a point straight down at a distance of 30 feet. So we're going to go down at 30 feet, drag that out. And then it says, drag the wall until it snaps or reaches its tangent. We're going to do that. Now I have an error. Your book, you probably didn't get an error. And if you've done everything exactly for the book, you wouldn't get the error. I'm getting the error because the wall that I just drew is in the wrong orientation. So I'm going to hit escape a couple times to get out of that, and you can see this outside portion of the wall is actually on the inside of the building. Easy to fix. Click on the Modify tab, click on the wall, and right here you're going to see these little things called flippers. They're going to let you change the orientation of that wall. And what you'll notice is it cleaned up this corner. So what the error told you was it couldn't finish the wall sweep. We'll talk about wall sweeps later, but right now all you need to know is if you get that error, flip the wall. Okay. Let's invoke the wall command again and start right here. Hit the tab button, and we need to go down 25 feet. And if I look at the figure 2.10 in your book, I see that I now need to go to the right 80 feet and then up another 25 feet. So we'll drag that horizontal, type in 80, and type in 25, and then we'll hit escape twice to get out of the command. Now if your wall command is ending after every single wall, what you need to know is you probably don't have chain selected right here in the options bar. So if I unselect chain and I go to draw a wall, I click here and click here, it exits out of the command. If I draw a wall and I have chain selected and I click here and click here, it's going to ask me really basically for the next point. I can continue to draw the wall. Very common to not have chain selected when you first start. I'm just going to delete those and get them out of our way for a second. All right, I'm on item 18, right after figure 2.10. Start the wall command if it isn't running already. I'm going to do it this time by typing WA. Again, that's no different than clicking on the ribbon. If it isn't running already, click one of the walls you already placed and select Create Similar. That's what all the cool kids are doing. You'll notice that the author has a interesting sense of humor. I'm going to tell you that by default, Revit's going to have the last wall that you drew loaded already, so I don't need to go create similar. On the draw panel, click the pick line icon. That's this green icon with an arrow. You're going to use this tool in a lot of different ways. So we're going to pick the line. Move on to the next item here. Item 20. On the options bar, you'll see an offset input, type 30. So this is your height of your wall. Don't type it there. I've made that mistake before. Type it right here in the offset box, 30 feet. And then what you're going to want to do is scroll over. And when I scroll over this, I see a blue line. It's kind of hard for me to point it out with my cursor, but as I scroll over that, you'll see a blue line show up. I'm going to click on that. I'm going to do the same thing over here. And what you're going to notice is this creates a funky intersection. This gives us an opportunity to explore the modify tools. So if I come up here to the modify trim to corner, I can select these two walls. It will trim to that corner. Select this wall and it will trim to the corner. When you are selecting your walls or trimming to a corner, you want to click on the pieces you're going to keep, not the pieces you're getting rid of. So let me undo that and redo it real quick. Control Z to undo it. I came up here to this command, trim to extend to corner. Click on this wall, the piece I want to keep, and the piece I want to keep. I'm going to undo it one more time. If I click on the piece I don't want to keep and the piece I don't want to keep, I'm going to get a result that I don't want. So again, I'll undo that. And one last time, trim here, trim and trim. And then I have my basic building outline, which gets me to essentially figure 2.17. In figure 2.17 and moving forward, what we want to do is add an appendage on the building right here. So the first thing the book asks us to do in item number 4 is to change our detail level. That's this icon down here. Looks like a checkered past. And what I want to do is I'm going to zoom in here and show you what changes. So right now my detail level is at fine. When I click on this and turn it to coarse, what you'll see is it took a lot of the information out. Basically now I'm just seeing the edge of the wall. I'm not seeing all the internal components. Doesn't mean they're not there, it just means I've changed the detail level at which I'm viewing the wall. Item 5 on the options bar, change the, oh, well, hold on. Yeah, I did that. So now what I'm going to do is draw a wall. So I'll invoke the wall command, WA. On the options bar, I'm going to take the offset and change that to 15 feet. And what you'll notice is when I come to the middle of this wall and I start drawing, I'm drawing the wall here, but where is it drawing the actual wall? 15 feet from where I'm drawing my line. So I'm going to go down 25 feet, I believe, hold on, yep, 25 feet. That puts one wall in place, and then I'm going to go back up 25 feet. That puts the second wall in place. I'm going to hit escape twice, go back to our architecture tab, invoke the wall again, zoom in here, and draw, oh, let's take our offset off to 0, draw that wall where I need to. You'll see that my wall is in the wrong orientation, so how do I fix that? Click on the wall, flip it. And what you'll notice is that this also kind of screwed up. So this is not in the book, but I'm going to talk about these little blue dimensions real quick. These are temporary dimensions. I think of them as drawing tools. So if I know I want this face of that wall and that face of that wall to be 25 feet, I can grab this witness line, click on there to move it to the outside of the wall. That tells me that I'm at 23 feet, 10 1/8 of an inch. I'm just going to type in 25, and now I know I'm exactly at 25 feet. Temporary dimensions are very, very useful. So one last thing I need to do, and so that I'm done with the shell of this, is clean up this wall. First thing I'm going to do is come up here to the split element tool, which you can see the shortcut is SL, and I'm going to split my element right there. Then I'm going to come to the trim to corner, and I'm going to trim those corners up. Slightly different than the book does it, but it gets me to the same result. So at this point, I should be essentially done with the exterior walls. And ready to move on to excuse me, adding interior walls. And I'm going to take a quick pause here. How long did that take us, do you think? 20 minutes, almost exactly 20 minutes to draw it and for me to explain it to you. So you will get to where you're that fast. Really, there should be a point where you're drawing this portion of the building in 5 minutes, something of this complexity. All right, so now we're back. We're going to go through the adding the interior walls portion of the book. Adding interior walls. Interior walls are basically the same as exterior walls in terms of how they're placed in the model. This is a good thing. Luckily, you can be slightly more relaxed with the justification. Now that the building has a footprint, you can see easily whether the walls need to be adjusted. You'll start by laying out an elevator shaft and a stairwell using an 8-inch CMU wall system. Follow these steps. Item 1. Open or make sure you're in the floor plan level 1. We are. Zoom into the northeast corner of the building as shown in figure 2.2. So that would be this corner of the building here that we need to zoom into. Figure 2.21. Start drawing the 8-inch CMU elevator shaft in the corner indicated here. Turn on the thin lines if you need to. This is thin lines right here. You see when I click it on, everything appears to be the same line weight. When I click it off, everything does not appear to be the same line weight. So thin lines helps you when you're trying to snap to corners and things of that nature. And I'll zoom in here so you can see this a little bit closer. Thin lines off, thin lines on. On the Architecture tab, click the Wall button. So we'll navigate to the Architecture tab, we'll click the Wall button. In the Type selector, select the generic 8-inch masonry. Okay, the type selector is part of the properties palette. Let me drag it over here on my screen. Again, I keep some of these palettes on my second screen because you can only see one of my screens. I drag it over here for your benefit. But this is the type selector. It has a drop-down arrow right here. We're going to click on that arrow, and it asks us to select what? It asks us to select
Generic 8-inch masonry.
generic 8-inch masonry. So we come here, generic 8-inch masonry. That is now my new wall type. For the purposes of this conversation, so I have more screen space, I'm going to drag this back over to my second screen. Excuse me. For the starting point, pick the corner as shown in figure 2.21. You can see that that is this point right here. So, let me hit escape here. I'll have to redo the wall command. Right there. I'm in the northeast corner of I'm in the corner the book has told me to be in. For the starting point, pick the corner shown in figure 2.21. The wall will probably be in the wrong orientation. So if the wall is in the wrong orientation, what do we do?
Spacebar.
Space bar. It moves it back and forth. Item 5. Move your cursor down and type 12. All right. Draws my wall. You'll see right off the bat it's shown differently than the exterior wall because it's a different wall type. Move your cursor to the right and type 10. Okay. Move your cursor back up the view and pick the exterior wall. Make sure you're at 90 degrees. 12 feet. All right. Click Modify. You should have 3 walls. What does Modify do? It does the same thing as hitting the escape button twice. It exits out of the command. So So, and I have 3 walls. Great. That takes us through item 8. Using temporary dimensions to gain control of your model. So we spoke about those a few minutes ago when we were putting the appendage on the outside. Now the book's going to take us through it. After you place items in a model, you usually need to make some adjustments. Revit does a good job with this. However, there are some rules to which you need to adhere. The goal here is to have a clear 10-foot dimension on the inside face of the shaft. At this point, you should assume you don't. This is where temporary dimensions come into play. Select the right vertical wall. We'll select it, and we'll see right now we have 9 foot 1 1/4 inches to those 2 points. If I click on this Move Witness Line button, it will move it from the inside of the wall to the outside of the wall to the inside of the wall.
What was that other one?
Yeah.
It's trying to grab the outside face of this wall here.
Oh, okay. I didn't get that.
All right, so now we're going to type 10 feet in here, and it will move the wall you have highlighted. Does that make sense? Excuse me? That's just a function of where I picked it. That dimension, that temporary dimension, can end up on the top. It can end up on the bottom. I can click and drag that temporary dimension to other places. Well, no, don't do that. That turns it into a permanent dimension by clicking that button. So that's just a user interface thing. Don't worry if your temporary dimension ends up at the top or the bottom. It's still controlling. It's a drawing tool, right? It's not a dimension. Now, if I want to keep that dimension, I can click right here, and you'll notice my pop-up says, make this temporary dimension permanent. And if I do that, then it becomes a permanent dimension. Now, here's the nice thing about permanent dimensions. And we're going to get into this, so don't worry about learning all about temporary dimensions and permanent dimensions. There's a whole chapter on annotation. So not to get us off course, I'm going to delete that and continue moving forward with the stuff in the book. All right. So that took us through item number 4. Now we're figure 2.24 in the book. Temporary dimension settings. Revit measures the default dimension for temporary dimensions from the center of the walls, which is typically the last place from which you want to take a dimension. You can change some settings to fix this action. On the Manage tab, click Additional Settings. So we're going to navigate to the Manage tab up here. We're going to click on Additional Settings. Click this down button there. And then we're going to go to temporary dimensions. All right. In the temporary dimensions property dialog box, select the faces in the walls. All right, so we want to go from center line to faces, just as a default. In the doors and windows group, select openings instead of the center line of the door. And that's just a user interface thing, and that's a preference. If Revit gives you the option. You can go to the center lines, you can go to the faces. I'm going to tell you the only time you would really change that is depending on the type of construction that you were working on. So if I'm doing CMU construction, my openings are typically dimensioned to the face of the opening. If I'm doing wood construction, my openings are typically dimensioned to the center of the opening because of the way that those windows and things go into the openings. So if I was on a wood project, I'd probably keep it on center line for the openings. The walls, I'm almost always going to be on faces. Hit OK there. So item 5, select the south horizontal wall. That would be this wall. Item 6, to the right of the dimensions, you'll see a small blue icon that also looks like a dimension. If you hover your mouse over it, a tooltip will appear indicating that you can make the temporary dimension permanent. Now, here, it's giving me a temporary dimension to what?
Reference.
My reference plane. So I can click and drag that to that wall, and all I've done is move the witness line. And what have I found out here? Well, it's not 12 feet because I was at the center of the wall. So if I click here, it's going to make that dimension permanent. Now I can still, just for argument's sake, make this 15 feet, and it's going to move that. If I type it 12, it's going to move it. But now I have an actual annotative dimension. That will show up when I print the drawing. Somebody asked, oh, why doesn't it just dimension itself? Because the information you give with dimensions, actually you need to think about. Is this the dimension I need? It's in the right place. If Revit just automatically dimensioned the whole plan, you would confuse a lot of people because things would be dimensioned from center line of walls, different phases than they should be dimensioned from. So you want to be careful about when you choose to turn these into permanent dimensions. All right, item 9. About midway through item 9. You need one more shaft wall to create a separation between the exterior walls and the shaft as shown in figure 2.28. We move that slightly over. The shaft wall. Select any CMU wall and click Create Similar. Or, we already know that the last wall I drew was CMU, so that Revit has defaulted to that. So I'm going to go to the Architecture tab. I'm going to click on Wall. If you get this, it just means you haven't saved in a while. You should go ahead and save. I'm going to hit Cancel for the sake of brevity at this point. But save and save often. I used to have a professor who said you live by the computer, you die by the computer. You want to save often, and you want to save in multiple places. On the Draw panel, click the Pick Line tool. That's this one that's green with the arrow. On the Options bar, be sure the location line is set to Finish Face Interior. Right now it's Finish Face Exterior. We're going to go Finish Face Interior. Offset the and type 10 foot in the offset. Offset the south CMU shaft wall from the inner line. Doing so separates the shaft wall from the exterior and creates a little chase. Here we go. So we should end up with something like this. Item 6, press Escape twice. Figure 2.28 shows the shaft wall. Make sure that you check your dimensions before proceeding. All right, so let's do that real quick. I'm going to click on the Modify to get out of the Wall tool. I'm going to select this wall, and I'm going to check some things with my temporary dimensions. That's there. If I wanted this to be exactly 10 feet, this is when I would change it, right? So I'd click on here and I'd say, hey, make this, come back, make this 10 feet. If I need a 10 foot clear there. As the drawing shows us. Also, the drawing shows us on figure 2.28 that this wall is actually supposed to be 12 feet from where? From here to the inside face. So we're going to make that 12 feet. And that makes our dimension here 12 feet. And you can see even in the permanent dimensions, I can move the witness line by clicking on this tab. Good?
So you want the inside.
So we want the inside dimension. We want to match figure 2.28 as closely as possible, which shows a dimension from here to here at 12 feet and shows a dimension inside this wall at 10 feet. So we'll put that in there. And now we're as close to figure 2.28 as we need to be. All right. The next task is to mirror these walls to the other side. So if something's symmetrical, do we need to draw both sides of it? No, draw one side, get it correct, and then mirror it. And the reason you want to get it correct is if it's not correct, you'll mirror the mistakes. Pick a window around all the masonry walls. Alright, now we have all those walls selected. On the Modify Walls tab, click the Mirror Pick Axis button. That's this icon right here. And then we're going to select this reference plane that we know is in the center. Why do we know it's in the center? Because earlier that's where we placed it. We're going to click on that. And if we got everything drawn properly, it should line up over here. What did I tell you about questions? Hold on a second. Figure 20 or 2.30. The elevator shaft is now mirrored. And we want to go ahead and save the model. And to save it, we're just going to go here, File, Save As. Make sure you're saving it as a project. And then save it somewhere that makes sense for you. Maybe under your Documents folder, you create a new folder for my class, like ADT 201. And then you would put, NRE, and maybe you do something like underscore 2.30, which lets you know that you've worked up through figure 2.30 in the book, and hit save. Alright, so placing interior partitions. The majority of your tasks in Revit involve placing interior partitions. Given the dimensional nature of placing these types of walls in Revit, you don't need to bother with reference planes as often as when you place the exterior walls. Knowing that, creating interior partitions is somewhat easier than creating the exterior variety. With the exterior type, you must place partitions carefully, and constant double checking is crucial. With the interior partitions, you can typically get the wall where you think you need it. You can then go back and make adjustments without disturbing too many adjacent items. Not that you have to do it this way. You can be accurate to begin with, but life is all about second chances. Again, the author's humor is... I think he got bored rewriting the book like the 10th time. To start adding interior partitions, you'll add the necessary lavatories and egress to fill these spaces with offices. When completed, this stage will look like figure 2.31. Figure the east side of the building with the egress and lavatories. The objective of this next procedure is to begin adding interior partitions. Make sure you're on floor plan level 1. You can see here that we are. On the Architecture tab, click the Wall button. Item 3. In the Type selector, select the interior 6 1/8 inch partition 2-hour wall. So I'm going to drag the Properties box back over here so you guys can see it. And I want to come down and select interior 6 1/8 partition 2 hours. Now I can always change the wall after I place it, but it's just easier to get the right wall when you start drawing. For height, choose level 2 from the drop down menu. And you'll see here in the options bar that we have the height, and right now we have level 2. Perfect, we're on the right page. Don't worry, we're going to talk about levels in depth. I believe it's chapter 4 of the book. I believe it's chapter 4 of the book. So if you don't understand what levels are at this point, it's not the end of the world. We're going to get there. For the location line, choose the finish face exterior. You can see right now the location line is wall center line. So we're going to finish face exterior. Great. Item 6, on the draw panel, click the Start in Radius Arc button. That's the same tool that we use to draw the arc on the other side of the building. Item 7, pick the lower left corner of the upper CMU walls. Okay, so this is the lower left corner of the upper CMU walls. Right there in the corner. For the end, we're going to pick the upper left corner of the bottom CMU walls. Or right here. Move your cursor to the left and specify a radius of 20 feet. So I'm just gonna excuse me, type in 20. And there my wall is. It's beautiful, right? It should look something like this. Item 10, press escape twice. You need to add some corridor walls. You can do this using the center reference plane you established earlier. Item 11, if you aren't still in the wall command, select and then right click the radial wall. I'm just going to click on wall. It gives us what we need. For the offset on the options bar, add a 4-foot offset. We're going to use the reference plane, but we're going to be offset by 4 feet. To start placing the walls, pick the intersection or endpoint of the center reference plane and the radial wall is shown in figure 2.34. So we're going to pick right here, and we're going to start drawing. And what do you notice?
It's offset.
It's offset 4 feet. Excuse me. The book shows it above the reference plane. How could I get it above the reference plane?
Space bar.
Hit the space bar and it's going to put it above the reference plane. Very good. And we want to draw essentially to there. And now we have one side of our corridor wall. Item 6, move your cursor to the left. Notice the wall is being drawn, but an offset 4 foot from the line you're drawing up in the middle of the building. Tap the space bar to flip it. For the second point of the wall, pick the intersection or endpoint of the vertical wall to the left. Item 8, move your cursor back to the right. Notice that the other side of the wall is being drawn at 4 foot offset. This time it's on the opposite side of the reference line. I didn't do that because I want to show you that I can use the mirror tool here to achieve the same thing. So I'm going to select the wall, mirror pick axis, and just like I did the elevator shaft, I can do that. And we're going to clean this up here in a second, so don't worry about that right this minute. So now we have our 2 corridor walls. And we look something like figure 2.35. Completing the main corridor, you still have to drag the walls to join them. Let's clean up the gaps between the radial walls and the 2 corridor walls. Make sure that you aren't still in the wall command by pressing escape twice or by clicking the modify button to the left of the ribbon. Select the top corridor wall on the right end of the wall is a blue grip. So when I select this wall, I get a blue grip. And I can simply just pull that grip and drag it together, and Revit is smart enough to clean up that wall intersection. We'll do the same thing down here, and we'll clean it up. Now there's a number of ways to get to that solution right there, but that's an easy way is to drag it. All right. Figure 2.37, the lavatory is at the west side of the building. Select and then right-click one of the corridor walls and select Create Similar from the menu. I'm going to do it just to illustrate, but you already know that that wall is loaded, so select that, Create Similar. Just means that you have that wall type. Look at your options and create the lavatory shown in figure 2.37. All the dimensions are taken from the inside finish face. All right, so the book doesn't give you step-by-step directions to do this. It gives us a figure that we then have to go from there and figure it out. So we have this wall here. Why don't we start by typing in an offset of 12 feet and using the pick walls icon. And then I have this wall all the way down. But before I get too far, what should I do? Check my temporary dimension, right? Because really I want 12 feet from here to here. I'm going to type in 12 feet. All right, now I have that kind of build everything else off of. You're going to see that I have a 6-foot wall that goes horizontally here, and then I have another 12-foot wall. So I'm going to go into the Modify tab and select the offset tool, type in 6 for 6 feet. I'm going to take this and offset it 6 feet. And then I'm going to use this Trim Extend Single Element to get rid of all the rest of that wall. And I'm going to check that. Doesn't give me quite what I want, so 6 feet. That puts that in the right place. I'm going to offset that wall 12 feet. And I'll double check that. And again, I'm not getting quite, it's offsetting them from the wrong place. And the reason that is, when I go to the wall command, I shouldn't be offsetting them in the wrong place. No big deal. So now I have those 2 walls in place, and I have a little shaft wall that's 2 feet in here, right? It creates a chase. So to do that one, I'm actually going to draw it with the offset tool or wall command. So I'll go to wall. I'll tell it I want an offset of 2 feet. And I'm going to click right here, It's in the wrong orientation, so I'm going to hit the space bar. And let's just double check that. Still not exactly where I want it. 2 feet. And does that get me? Oh, no, I'm sorry. I was in the right place. So let's double check that by moving my witness line. 2 feet. All right. Does that look like figure 2.37? Except I have this wall running all the way across the corridor. So let me trim that real quick. All right, looks like figure 2.37. Now I have the same thing on the other side of the wall. What do you suggest I do?
Mirror.
I'm going to select all this stuff and I'm just going to mirror it. Now, here's what I would really do. If I knew those two lavatories were going to be exactly the same, I would build them completely out. I'd put fixtures and ceilings and everything else in them before I mirrored it. Why? Just that I'm only drawing it once. This way I'm actually drawing it twice. I only drew the walls once, but I'm actually going to be drawing it twice. Does that make sense? All right, good. You now need another corridor running north and south as shown in figure 2.39. The best way to approach this task is to add another reference plane and then add the walls in a fashion similar to the method applied in the east-west corridor to open the central area. You'll add a 45-degree walls at 4 foot following these steps to add the new walls. Figure 2.39, this is the finished corridor layout that we're trying to achieve. Item 1 on the work plane panel of the architecture tab, click the reference plane. So we go to architecture, work plane, reference. Draw a reference plane from the midpoint of the top of the exterior wall to the midpoint of the bottom of the exterior wall. All right, I'm going to type SM so I know I'm snapping to the middle. I'm going to draw that straight down. There we go. Click the measure between two reference button. Make 100% sure that this is the center of the building. You're going to rely on this line heavily. Okay, let's make sure it's there in the center. 48 and 10 1/8, 48, 10 1/8. That looks pretty centered, right? We want to double check things that we're laying out off of, just as if we were building a building and this was the building string we were going to measure everything off of. We want to invest in that. We want to make sure that it's in the right place before we get started. Start the wall command. I'm going to do it by typing WA. On the options bar, be sure location line is set to finish face interior. Finish face interior. And the offset is set to 4 feet. 4 feet. Great. Pick the top intersection endpoint of the reference plane and the exterior wall. When we start drawing, what happens? And then we're going to just draw it up the other way. I'm going to hit escape twice. So now I have something that looks like this. And that takes us through item 8. Now we're going to add the 45s at the corners of this intersection. Let's zoom in there. On the architecture tab, we did that. Finish face. Zoom into the intersection of the corridors. On the architecture tab, click the reference plane on the work plane panel. On the draw panel, click the pick line button. All right, so we're going to add yet another reference plane, architecture, reference plane, pick line. Make sure that offset is changed to 4 feet. Change that to 4 feet. On the draw panel, click the pick line button. Offset's changed to 4 feet. Item 4, from the finished inside face of the top horizontal corridor wall, offset the reference plane up. So we want to come to this wall and offset a reference plane. Let's read that again. From the finished inside face of the top horizontal wall, right there, offset it up 4 feet. We're going to do the same thing down here. And we're going to do the same thing there and the same thing there. That gives us some points to work with, right? Oh, well, I gave us more points than the book did, but we're okay. Now we're going to add the 45-degree wall. After you pick the starting point, move your cursor to the left and down at a 45-degree angle. So we'll create architecture wall. And we're going to start here and move down at 135 degrees or 45. And it should give us something like this. Now, I'm going to deviate a little bit from the book. We have it's a little bit better there. We have some reference planes here, and we have the mirror tool at our disposal, right? So just click this, mirror pick axis, right? And then select both of them. And you can do that by clicking on one, holding down your control button, clicking on the other. Mirror pick axis. Something like that, right? Now I'm going to use the split element and trim command to just clean all of this up quickly. So I'm going to go to modify, split element, split that one, and this one, and this one. Then I'm going to go to the trim to corner. I want to keep that, and that, and that, and that, and this, and this, this, and this. Oh, sorry. This, and this, and this. Is this the only way that you can do this? No, there's multiple ways that you can do this. This just happens to be a way to get that particular task done quickly. You can also follow the steps step by step in the book, which will get you to the same point. And I think it's important to understand that there's multiple ways to get to the same point in Revit. So if you do it step by step by the book and that gets you there, that's beautiful. If you deviate and you learn something along the way but you still get there, that's okay too. You will develop your own preferences as you use the program more and more. So don't freak out if you didn't follow the steps in the book exactly. All right. Editing wall joints. A separate function in Revit deals with the editing wall joints, specifically the edit wall joints command, which can come in handy. To get started, let's add more walls to an already busy corner of the building. Zoom into the northeast corner of the building shown in figure 2.48. That's this corner of the building right here. Item 2, start the wall command. Make sure it's the same 6 1/8 inch 2-hour partition you've been using. I'm going to type WA to start the wall command. With the chain button off and location line set to finish exterior, chain button off, location line, finish exterior. To start the wall, pick the intersection where the CMU wall abuts the inside finished face of the exterior wall. See figure 2.49. So we're talking about having a wall right up here. The wall may be flipped in the opposite direction from figure 2.50. If it is, remember to press the space bar. Doing so flips it to the proper orientation. So we're going to click here, and it looks like we're in the right orientation at this point. And we're going to add a wall essentially all the way to here. So we should have a result that looks something like this. The wall and the resulting intersection. Pick the second point of the wall at the corner in the middle of the building. Press escape twice. The intersection should look like figure 2.50. Let's zoom in there. And What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and put it back up to fine. And you can see we've got some issues going on there, right? Zoom back in on the intersection. If the view doesn't resemble figure 2.5 in terms of line weight, click on thin line icon. So that's thin lines off, that's thin lines on. But we see we have a little bit of a mess, right? On the geometry panel, the modify tab, click the wall joins button. So here's the geometry panel. Here's the wall joins button. And what that's going to allow you to do is essentially hover over a set of joints so that we can clean them up. So if we click on that joint, as shown in figure 2.52, Revit will display a big box. We have that box shown. Pick anywhere within that area. Doing so, establish that this is an intersection you want to edit. After you pick the intersection, some additional lines appear. These lines expose how Revit is actually looking at the corner. On the options bar, you now see some choices for configuring the intersection. Select the miter option as shown in figure 2.54. This option is the most popular. Alright, so we're going to select miter. And what happened? You saw that we got a miter line right here in this joint. Although a wall of this type would never have a 45-degree miter in real life, mitering the corner in Revit allows for a more uniform joint between the adjacent walls. Alright. Everybody sees how that works?